Welcome to the Education Blueprint. I'm Dr. Jon Rysewyk, Superintendent of Knox County Schools in Knoxville, Tennessee.
And I'm Prentice Elliott, a public school parent and your producer and co-host.
Well, today we're talking about the most important question and the most frequent question I get in my job. And you think, is it budget? No. Is it how we pick leaders for schools? No. Is it how do we pick instructional materials? It's none of those things. The question I get asked more frequently in a given year than any other is, are we having school tomorrow? And today I'm happy that we're going to talk through what it means to take a snow day.
Well, you have presidential pardon power. You have the ultimate veto. You're the guy that says whether or not we have school. So this is very important. We're going to find out some stuff today, hopefully, that'll inform us as we go through the rest of this winter season.
Oh, definitely. A good chance to look behind the curtain, just how difficult sometimes those decisions are to make.
Difficult and fun, I suppose, on the other end, depending on which way you want things to roll. For the kids, they're looking for, obviously not having a school day, and the parents, it might be a little bit different.
Yeah, and I'd say even more than the kids sometimes. Our teachers, too, the number of adults that wear their pajamas inside out when there's a forecast of cold weather and precipitation. And I get it. Been a teacher myself and may or may not have worn my pajamas inside out a time or two. But, it definitely is exciting. There's something about a snow day that everybody loves.
And luckily, we're not doing this just you and me today. We've got some help.
This is a far-reaching, a regional, and very high-impact winter storm that's going to impact many areas.
With more than 30 years of weather forecasting experience in East Tennessee, WBIR Chief Meteorologist Todd Howell has become a fixture in homes across Knox County and a trusted source for weather information.
Todd, we're talking about snow days today, and that's always an exciting time.
The S word.
Yes, the S word that makes you and I not sleep, right?
That's exactly right.
It always comes in. So when we think about snow days, it is fun to watch how people revert back to their childhood, right? All these kind of fun, warm feelings, all that stuff. So I know you were raised in Gaffney, South Carolina, which is probably not a place that got a ton of snow, but what is your earliest memory or fondest memory of a snow day?
Yeah, John, I grew up on the other side of the mountains. Now, Gaffney, South Carolina, folks may be wondering, where is that? If you've been on Interstate 85, going from Greenville, Spartanburg, Gaffney, there's two things Gaffney's kind of known for in general. The hammocks and the outlet malls on the interstate, but also if you've seen that big peach on the side of the interstate. Now, this little levity, little comedy here, but it's a peach. Actually, seriously, real quick funny note. In Gaffney, we did get, sometimes it didn't snow a lot, but when it did, sometimes it snowed decent because there's that upslope flow into the mountains. I really appreciate what you said about everybody's maybe got a different interest.
Oh, yeah.
And invest in different ways about may or may not be wanting snow.
Sure.
One of my favorite memories was it was actually a Sunday morning, so it was on the weekend. But my dad, he knew how much I love snow. He woke me up. He said, "Todd, look outside. We've got like a foot of snow.
Oh, wow.
It's like very cold." And I thought he was pulling my leg. He wasn't. We ended up with 14 inches of snow that day, and the high was like 16. Anyway, that was great because we were out of school for. So as a kid, I also love snow. So I just
Well, it's probably one of those universal things for all people, right?
Yes.
We all go to school and we all like a good snow day, and so that is we think about that lots of times. Whether that's freezing your fingers and toes. Coming inside and getting hot cocoa, whatever that is, it's kind of a nice kind of break, an unscheduled vacation day for a lot of people.
It is different. And you know what's funny, too? We do a lot of school talks. And just back to the teachers. Yeah. This is classic, right? Usually when it gets on later in that semester, later in the school year, about that time, teachers say, "Hey, we got any snow days coming?"
They need them.
I'm laughing and a little bit of tongue-in-cheek, but it is a different day.
It is.
It can rain any day of the year.
Right.
It takes a special to get snow. Everything's got to come together just right.
So
it is a special day when it snows.
I'm excited to get in and pick your brain on some of that stuff because it'll teach us a lot of things too. One thing I think people think sometimes when they get to be our age that we've always been chief meteorologists or superintendents, right? And that's not. Over 30 years at WBIR, which is amazing. Chief meteorologist for most of those. And so, especially for our students and our families, just to get to know you a little bit, like what does that pathway look like for you? How did you start? Were you born as a young child? You said you liked snow. Did you decide then you were going to be a chief meteorologist in Knoxville one day?
No. I'm a pretty simple person, probably too simple in a lot of ways. Seriously, there's, as my wife and I joke, she said, "What are you thinking about? There's not a lot going on up there." Or the hamsters turning.
True.
So I'm pretty simple. My basic story was I loved snow growing up. I was fascinated by it.
Okay.
But that wasn't going to be my career.
Yeah.
I went to college, got my undergrad in marketing business. And then when I graduated from marketing business, I worked.
And that was University of Georgia?
It was University of Georgia.
Okay.
I wasn't going to mention that.
I was just saying. I mean, let's get it out there.
Are we all good?
At least it's SEC. We're okay.
We're in the college football playoffs, so hopefully we're good.
I think it's important to note that Jon is a K-12 superintendent. So Georgia, you're fine. University of Georgia,
That's right. We're good.
Any school that kids get into is perfectly fine.
It's perfectly fine.
That's right.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Prentice. Well, the key here, that's where I met my wife.
Oh, okay.
So, most important.
That's good. It was worth it.
But so I graduated undergrad. I was working on a golf course for my uncle.
Oh, wow.
Naturally, when you graduate college, right? Marketing degree. Nope. I was interviewing, didn't have anything, working on a golf course. Jon, you may like this too. This is going back a while.
Okay.
This was back in the late 80s, early 90s.
Okay, I was around.
I'm dating myself a little bit. So then I sold IBM typewriters.
Really?
And personal computers when the first PS2.
Oh, wow, yeah.
What are you talking about?
What is that? Did it fit in my pocket? No.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, where's my phone? Here's my
did it fit in your car? Exactly.
It's amazing how fast things come by. But that was my first business job.
Interesting.
So real quick, fast story.
Yeah.
Basically, I was on my sales call one day. I was in Georgia, Northeast Georgia is my sales territory. And I found I was looking at different models because that was my hobby. Weather was a hobby, not a career. It's just going to be a hobby. I saw there was going to be a chance for snow in North Georgia. Jon, I went just a little bit out of my sales territory. And it was raining around Athens in North Georgia. But I got to the mountains because I knew if you gain latitude and altitude, that's where you find snow. So I need to do both. I need to go north, latitude, and I need to go up in elevation, altitude. I found the snow. What God kind of showed me that day is, Todd, you're this serious.
Wow.
I mean, you love this that much. Maybe you should check into it. So
it was a little more than a hobby at that point. You knew the latitude, the altitude, and you knew where to go find it. So it's a pretty deep hobby.
Well, and so I stopped by a National Weather Service office in Athens. Thankfully, this wasn't out of the territory, so within my territory this time. And I stopped by. I just asked, "Is there any colleges with a meteorology program?"
Really?
They said, "No, we don't really have much." And then he went over. I'll never forget though. This was kind of a God thing. He went over to his filing cabinet, opened it up. He said, "Well, I've got this one pamphlet," and he just took it out. It was just a pamphlet, skinny little pamphlet. He took it out and handed it to me, and it was on a broadcast meteorology program. Mississippi State.
Okay.
It was a 2-year program. I'd already been 4.5 years. So
another SEC school,
another
SEC county.
That's exactly right. Not a big fan of the cowbells.
There you go.
Total side. Could never get used to the cowbells. Anyway, different Bulldogs. But anyway,
that's right.
So, but I went there, and it was a great program. It was 2 years. If it had been 4 years, I probably wouldn't have done it. But and I'm skipping over a little bit. But basically, God gave me the desires of my heart. Got a job at WBIR in 1993, Knoxville. SEC town.
Another one too.
Athens to Starkville to Knoxville.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a cool theme, and been here ever since.
Man, I think about that, and I think if you, whenever you're ready, you could probably be the official meteorologist of the SEC. You've covered pretty much the whole Southeastern Conference now. I think things when I hear that, even for our students to hear, one, you had a passion, and I love the fact that you said God kept calling that out for you. Right, there was a call for you. And you continue to pursue it, had people in your life who continue to push you that way.
Yes.
Understanding family who wanted that for you. And I think just the mentorship, when you mentioned the names of the people who were here, who very willingly, who also probably loved weather, wanted to make sure they passed that on to the next generation. I think that's a very powerful story.
Well, thank you. And the key for, kids who are tuning in and watching, and parents and everybody, you said the key word, passion.
Well, that's powerful. And I, again, appreciate you being in here for this. Really excited in our next segment to get into, just to jump into a little bit of the science, let you share some of that passion so that help our listeners and myself kind of understand how weather works in East Tennessee.
Absolutely, Jon.
Yeah, they say, if the old saying is, if you don't like the weather, wait 5 minutes and it'll change.
That's right.
I think it was coined here in East Tennessee, the Knoxville area, because that's certainly true. So on the other side of this break, we're going to talk about why that is with one of the experts here, and tell us maybe how we can predict the weather. How about that? Coming up on the Education Blueprint.
I always think there's a sweet spot in snow. Everybody's good for 2 days, and after 3, they're kind of over it. believe me, as someone when severe weather's coming who watches your hourly updates to kind of see what's happening and that sort of thing, it appears there's a whole lot of science, but there's a pinch of art in weather forecasting in East Tennessee as well.
Yeah, it's the key in East Tennessee is the topography. Why is it so interesting?
Yeah.
Difficult.
Yeah.
It's all about topography. And we have 3 distinct regions, the plateau, the valley, and the mountains. And that's what really plays into that. But it's a fascinating area to forecast weather. And we don't take it lightly. And, every day's different. And one of the things, and I know we're going to dive in here, Jon, is guess which season is the most difficult, if I had to say, to predict weather in East Tennessee. And it's pretty clear.
Yeah.
It's winter.
I'm guessing it's winter.
It's winter.
Yeah.
Storms are hard. Sometimes summertime, they can get a little tricky. Fall is easy. We love fall.
Yeah.
Very cool tonight. A little frost on the pumpkin. Sunny, mild, AB
You
day.
said that before.
Have a good day.
That's right.
We love the fall. And spring's good, too.
Yeah. I'll say this, as superintendent, it always seems like this is a scenario that's going to happen. Yeah. Precipitation to hit at midnight. Yeah. It's 34 degrees. And the temperature is going to drop through the night, possibly changing over to wintry mix at 2 a.m., right? Yeah. That feels so common in my world.
Yeah. Listen, I know we have a tough job as meteorologists in East Tennessee.
Yeah.
Humbly, I'm the first one to raise my hand and admit because it can be very tricky. And we're always learning. No 2 snowflakes are exactly alike. No 2 weather systems are exactly alike.
Okay.
So you can glean some knowledge and wisdom from previous events, but every system's different, and so we're constantly learning about those differences. But you've got certainly a very hard job, and one of the tricky parts I think is the timing. It's exactly what you just said.
Yeah.
Does it come at night or in the morning? And and I know it's tricky. For parents, they want to be able to plan.
Oh, yeah. We might get a few of those calls.
We may not know ahead of time.
Yeah.
And so sometimes it's the morning. But that's where I know where it gets really tricky. So hopefully, as meteorologists, any meteorologist needs to see, all of us in National Weather Service, hopefully we can do a good job to give you and your staff the needed information to make a good decision, because that certainly gets tricky.
Well, you guys do a great job and help us keep kids safe by that, and we try to be cautious. So just one other question on you. You talked about the topography, the valley, the mountains, the plateau. We always hear about that. If you're traveling across the plateau, and thank goodness we're a little short of that. But are there places where typically we see if a weather pattern is coming from somewhere, or that we know this is probably big snow, or it's just going to blow over, those sorts of things?
Yeah. Your audience and listeners may have heard this before, and guess who told me? Margie Ice.
There we go. Another mentor.
Said, Todd, when it's coming from west to east across the plateau, over the plateau in the valley, once it comes over that plateau and down in the valley, it tends to break up some. Sometimes shoot on off to the north when it's come from a westerly direction. Here's the key, and you know this very well. When it's coming up the valley from Chattanooga, batten down the hatch. I think that was her word.
It's going to hit.
Moira Kay, who did a little bit of everything, also told me that as well. Batten down the hatches. When it's coming up from Chattanooga, you get if you want snow, here's what you want: a low pressure in Louisiana. You want a high pressure in Indiana, Ohio, feeding the cold air ahead of time. You want the ground to be cold. You want the cold air. This is for all the snow lovers. You want the ground to be cold.
This is the recipe. Everybody listen.
Yeah, exactly. This is all for all the teachers. I mean, for all the Anyway, you want the ground to be cold air feed, and you want that low pressure in Louisiana. You want it to track right up toward the southern Appalachians, just to our south, maybe North Georgia, up Chattanooga, up the valley.
That's it.
Goose feathers.
That's the magic.
So that's it. That's your favorite scenario. There was a storm. Let's see, what was that? 1993. I'm trying to remember what storm that was.
Do we have snow that year?
Oh my goodness. that was a whole nother level. A different animal. The blizzard of 1993.
Yeah.
It did that. It bombed out in the Gulf.
Was the same.
Track right now. That was an exceptional.
Wow.
But
that was amazing.
That's the key. The plateau, the valley, the mountains. Now, here's the key. Let's say we didn't have the plateau. You know what Knox will be like? Nashville. Oh, okay. It'll be here in about an hour. Nothing's going to break it up.
Yeah, there's nothing to separate.
The plateau influences our weather in the valley. Because when the air goes over the plateau in the valley, it breaks up and it sinks. That warms the air a little bit and it breaks it up. If there was no barrier there, how many times you see it from Memphis, Nashville? They're just timing it.
Oh, yeah, they know.
There's not much. You got the Highland Rim around it, but there's not much that disrupts it. So we live in a very unique area No excuses because we've got to try.
But that does make it hard. I mean, it definitely makes it
really
hard
does.
to predict.
Topography, the lay of the land, determines a lot of what we see. Even in the valley, even in Knox County, all the ridges you see, Beaver Ridge, Black Oak Ridge, guess what? Copper Ridge, guess what? That has a say in the wintertime because low elevation events. The ridges have more of a say in the wintertime. In a nutshell, that's why the weather's hard to predict in the valley.
That makes sense. We hear from our
ridges and
contractors on those ridges, lots of bus contractors on those ridges that will tell us, hey, this is going on. We're not sure we can get up that hill, and all that is a big factor for us in making those decisions. So it's neat to know that there is some science behind that. Yes. So maybe could you take us into kind of as we get closer to an event happening. So I know sometimes, again, we're like temperature's close. You said the timing, sun's gone down, so temperature drops, all these kinds of things. Right. So how do you guys, like, what's going on in the studio? I always say if you're chief meteorologist, I think that just means you get to spend the night when severe weather hits.
But we're on call.
That's right,
like a doctor.
There you go. So you have to have the ones who know. So like what's happened in those hours or maybe minutes like leading up to that as you all update forecast?
Yeah. As you know, as far as Channel 10, WBIR, our weather team, and all meteorologist staffs do the same thing pretty much. You communicate as a team. We get, John, we get model data out to 16 days, 4 times a day.
Oh, wow.
We have a lot. Technology's great. We get a lot of different model data. Each when I say model, it's a computer model that tries to basically, look at the atmosphere and determine what it's going to do, the high, the low, rain, snow, clouds, sunshine. It tries to, model the whole atmosphere. So we get that data out 4 times a day. But every model has a different spatial resolution. And so everyone does a little something different, each model. But we're looking at the data and continuously, as a weather team, we're communicating as far as snow goes. So here's kind of the name of the game. We're not going to put snow in the forecast before 7 days. Of course, we have our 7-day forecast.
Right.
Now, could we hint at it? Yeah, there's this trough coming down, maybe a little wintry weather, we'll see. But really, we're not going to have that in our forecast until it gets closer. So our basic protocol, and we have a graphic for this, 4 to 5 days out, it's possible. We may have it on our 7-day as a chance, as a low percentage.
Especially when there's a lot of bread and milk on the shelves, right?
True story. They don't do this now, but used to, we'd always have a sponsor, right, coming back from commercial going into weather. Guess what? It's classic. I'm sitting at the desk. I don't know what commercial's coming up for, but I would chuckle because, I'm just going to throw out, it was just this particular grocery store, but tonight's weather sponsored by Kroger. And I knew we were getting ready to talk about snow, and I'm just thinking, this is classic.
That's right.
People are going to know they're in cahoots.
You can't script that stuff.
You can't make this up. But no, we are not. Well, honestly, no, it's not.
Oh, that's good.
But we take that information and we will not put snow totals until 24 to 48 hours out.
Okay.
Again, we'll talk about a chance, a low percentage chance. And why not? Why wouldn't you put it 3, 4, 5 days? Well, there's a good reason. Number one, it could change. And number two, we live in East Tennessee.
Yeah.
But
really
mainly
change.
it could change. It could really change. The patterns can change, and so you don't want to. And again, I've been on that other side. You put snow in that forecast, and then you take it out. Oh, you just took somebody's Christmas presents away. Yeah. It's serious. Believe me, we get it. We're very sensitive to that. People, that's a sensitive subject.
We're glad you are sensitive, and I think even for folks who have to make decisions and. That 24, 48-hour window, like you said, even then it can change, and
even then, exactly,
it makes
even
a
overnight,
lot of those, right? So it is definitely important for us to look at that. But that's interesting to me, just the science. I have one last question on the just to see if you can help. I know we'll get lots of times people saying, well, the state trucks or the county salt trucks were out. They were spreading the brine. We saw that. We're going to be fine. All those things, and then we get situations where like the roads freeze after that, or all those kinds of things. What's the magic of the salt? What is it supposed to do, and is it always effective?
You know what? I don't know if you have this plan, but you need to have Mark Nagy on it from TDOT.
That's a good idea.
He's going to get real detailed.
He get real into it. I like it.
Now, he's probably watching this. No, that's not right, Todd. That's not right. And I have a general understanding. Sure. It does get very scientific. It's a chemist. They're actually doing these mixtures.
Interesting.
Of the brine solution, the salt, sodium chloride, the different solution. Yeah. And what that is designed to do, and you see this, of course, there's a chance for snow. And guess what? It's in that 24 to 48 hours. So, they don't want to put it down too early. It changes, and then they wasted that. So it's the same thing with TDOT, and we're all looking at a lot of the same. So it gets in that window. Anyway, they put that brine down. That's going to help to avoid and not have initial icing conditions. It's going to melt the snow up to a certain temperature. Brine is the first phase. So if it starts to snow and your temperatures are generally hold me to this, but generally 27, 28 degrees and higher, and initially it'll work well. Now, here's the key. As you know, brine is the first step. After that, let's say it snows really hard or the temperatures drop to the lower 20s and certainly in teens. Brine is not work. You got to go to granulated salt and you got to go to a whole. So they're going, okay, it's kind of like a cocktail of different things that they're going to put on the road. You know, your brine's your first step. All right, now we need to go, granulated. You may even see them, going the sand and dirt mixed with salt pellets and different things. And again, Mark Nagy.
Yeah.
Your previous guest didn't know what was anyway, but that's what
we're going to ask Mark if we get him on. We'll have him project the weather. How about
there you go. We'll do that exactly. But what the toughest thing for TDOT and the toughest thing for treating the roads. What if it rains first?
All that treatment washed away.
It's not going to work.
It's not going to work.
That's the key, but it happens.
Yeah.
So they get you have a very tough job, Martin.
They do too.
I have a very tough job because it's tricky, especially with our varied terrain. And you mentioned Halls can get snow and maybe Fair gets not get So even in Knox County, you can have varied conditions, and that's why somebody say, well, it's not snowing in my yard, but it's absolutely dumping up in Coreyton,
100%.
So anyway, those are another example of these varied road conditions in our area.
That makes and you're right. The road conditions and the weather combined would make us make these calls, and I think we're going to talk a little bit too how we make those calls coming up in our next sections.
Yeah, it's important stuff. You can't get a refund on that bread and milk quite as easily if it doesn't come through. So you guys both have tough jobs, and I think on the other side of this break, we're going to talk to Superintendent Rysewyk about how tough it is for the folks here in the school system to make those calls and how we actually do that. On the other side of this break, this is the Education Blueprint with Dr. Jon Rysewyk.
Probably the mayor of KCS.
That's Adelina, a fourth grader at Sequoia Elementary, when we asked her who she thinks makes the decision to call off school for a snow day. Still to come on the Education Blueprint.
So they're actually out early running those routes. A bus is different than a four-wheel drive car when you're taking those out too.
Good point.
All right, welcome back to the Education Blueprint with Dr. Jon Rysewyk. I'm your producer, Prentice Elliott, and we are joined here today by Chief Meteorologist of WBIR, Todd Howell, and we're talking weather and school closings. And I know, Todd, you've got kids, I've got kids, and I've always wondered, at least before I worked for the school system, did you ever wonder how they make these calls, how the superintendent goes through all this stuff?
The only knowledge I had a good friend when I was in Gaffney. One of our friends, her father was actually part of the connected to the superintendent's district office, and he would go around in the morning, like 5 or 6 a.m., and actually drive the roads, and that's when they made a call. We never got out of school night before, unless it was actually already dumping, I should say. But before it snowed, no. Believe me, I heard it from our kids about whether there's a chance for snow. By the way, talking about teacher, my wife was a teacher. And so
I didn't know that.
I hear from, she's a therapist and counselor, but I hear from my kids and my wife about, is it going to snow?
I'd say you and I are very similar on that. We get these calls, and people who know our families give these calls.
Yes.
Hey, what's your dad saying? No, you've got that before, I'm sure.
It's not as easy as just out or in.
Yeah,
it's
very true.
It's complicated. There's a lot of different factors involved in it.
There are for sure.
Yeah. And there's a lot of different procedures. And you mentioned some of the ones that you guys go through at WBIR. What are some of the ones that we go through here at KCS?
Yeah, Prentice, thanks. Let me talk about how we get snow days. I think that's one thing a lot of people don't know. They think we just have, this certain any amount we need or whatever that is, and then they don't know when we have to take days from spring break or extend the year. So we are, by law, all Tennessee districts are required to be in school for 180 days. That means physically in school. Okay. So how we get these days, they're called stockpile days. And so they can be used for more than snow. They can be used for teacher development. They can be used for, sometimes we have high wind days. We have flooding, those kinds of things too. Right. So all of those fit. But the way we get those is we go our 180 days. The law requires us to be in school for 6.5 hours. In Knox County, we go 7 hours. So we stockpile those 30 minutes. To get up to 13 days that allow us to have those.
I bet a lot of I never heard that.
Yeah.
I bet a lot of people going, wow.
Yeah, how
never
does
knew
that happen? Well, so what ends up happening as a result of that is sometimes toward the end of the year we will use 2 snow days, and it's now April, and we're moving on, and we'll get every year a few emails going, well, do we get to stop 6 days early?
Oh.
And the truth of the matter is no, because we have to go 180 days, and it's the 30 minutes a day that gets you that. So you can't remove those days from the end of the school year and only be in school for 174 days, which would be illegal. So we have to go the 180. We get it by the 30 minutes a day is how we get to that level.
That is interesting, though. You mentioned 30 minutes every day. So could you not then just take off 30 minutes at the end of every day towards the end as you get closer to summer if you've got days left over?
I would say you probably, if you wanted to do the math and talk to the folks at the state, maybe. But part of that, too, is how teachers have then at that point divided up their curriculum they're going to cover, their testing schedule, all those kinds of things. And, at that point, as you just said, Todd, it's hard to predict the weather or when. We've had snow in April, those kinds of things. So by the time you know that, you're probably clear in May, and that's usually people are wrapping up anyway. So great question, though.
Okay, so Todd talked about the procedures they have in place and how long before they're comfortable to say whether or not it's going to snow.
Yeah.
That's a little different than saying whether or not we're going to go to school or not. Mm-hmm. So how is that decision made?
Yeah. I'll tell you, I was so glad to hear Todd say 24 to 48 hours because that's about when our tough decision making comes in, right, in that window. So we really have tried to, in the 3 years that I've been here, have really tried to work on communication time. So we want to communicate as early as possible, but also as accurately as possible.
Right.
And so for us, that window you talked about, sometimes that call not being made when you were a student till the next morning. Our goal is the 6 o'clock newscast. I mean, that's your all's world. That's when everybody's tuning in. That's when those kinds of things happen. And when we know, or snow has started to fall, or we're starting to see some areas of the county start to show that, obviously for safety reasons, we make that call. We want people to know for childcare and for all the things as soon as they do.
I think that's a big, especially in today's world, all the planning.
Yeah,
it has to go into
100%
because so many adjustments have to be made, especially if it doesn't happen or if it's not sure until the next morning.
Right.
It's like, oh shoot.
Yeah.
Got to rearrange.
What do we do now?
So what do you do now?
Yeah,
so
and
I could appreciate
60,000 students, right? So those homes being made. I mean, the decision made for every home, and what they may do or may not do. We can't always assume that no one's going to work on snow days either. So they have those kinds of child care, and
that's a good point.
So if we don't get 6 o'clock, which that's kind of the prime spot, that as being on the news. There's that weird window of that 11 o'clock, and we try. I mean, we'll make the call for 11 if snow starts falling at 9:30.
Right.
But we try to make it before then. A lot of folks have gone to bed by then. We have a lot of younger students.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Our buses start pretty early, 5 o'clock in the morning, that sort of thing. So that's not the most ideal time to make that call. Again, we will if we need to. We also have a messaging system that goes to every home and every parent. So we don't just rely on the news, but most people do turn on the news and watch you guys and hear that on the radio.
There's multiple ways they'll certainly be notified.
Definitely. So, if not, because we described that situation earlier, that it usually has to be dark before the temperature drops low enough for all the recipe to come together and all the ingredients. So, so we do a 4:30 call in the mornings.
Okay.
That's critical for us if it's the next day before we see it.
Right.
It's critical for us because our buses do hit the road pretty quick.
Yeah.
And so just so folks know, it's not the most fun call to be on because it is early, but so we do 4:30 in the morning, and the folks who are on that, so my chief of staff's on it. We have 5 assistant superintendents. They're on it. Our director of public affairs, Carly Harrington, she's the one who gets to send the call out. Everyone loves Carly. When I go on school visits, when I introduce her when she's with me, they're like, oh, you're the snow lady, right? So they love Carly because she gets to cancel the day. So she's the one that gets all the props out of these calls.
Yes.
But we have our director of transportation, our director of maintenance and operations, our chief of security, all on those calls who have very specific needs because we know we have a quick window when we get on that 4:30 call.
Okay.
And so my chief of staff runs that call, and it's very much we want our security team to report out. You talked about a story about someone you knew who used to drive the roads. We do the same. The technology hadn't changed that much.
Yeah, right.
So
still got to get out there and see it.
You do, because you don't know. Reports of what it is versus being out. So our security team, a lot of folks don't know this, that we have folks working 24/7. We have over 120 officers, and we're working that around the clock.
Wow.
So they're actually out early running those routes, especially the areas that our director of transportation knows you talked about the ridges and near waterways and things like spots that tend to be more troubled spots.
Yes.
So we get a report from that. Then they also give us a report from a member of our security team who's talked to the National Weather Service in Morristown to kind of get those hourly by hourlies.
Absolutely.
And we get that. We also have our director of transportation. All of our buses are contracted. We have multiple contractors. And so he's already been on the phone with them at 4:30 to give us the call of, in their different geographic area, what it looks like. Do they feel safe to take? A bus is different than a four-wheel drive car when you're taking those out too.
That's a good point.
And so he has that information.
Right.
And then we also hear from our maintenance team because, the other thing, we have 91 facilities, 91 schools. And some of those, sometimes there's debris that's falling, maybe blocking something. Sometimes, we're looking at those sidewalks and we're looking at the just the entryways into those areas. Do we have heat? Do we have water? Do we have plumbing? Is all that in there? And is it all functioning? Did anything freeze up overnight? And so we have all those checks done before 4:30, and then they give me all this information in about 15 minutes.
See, that's a whole what you just mentioned. That's a whole lot more than just is it sticking to the roads or not.
100%.
How are our schools doing? How are the facility? We have heat. How the sidewalks, like you said. Just operationally, there's a lot more that goes into it. So that's fascinating.
There is a lot, and so we try to make that call. Then so my assistant soups will weigh in because there's all these other external factors too. What academic things do we have going on that day? What sports events? What extracurriculars? And all these that have big impacts on not just Knox County, right? And sometimes there are tournaments going on, and we're in a regional tournament, and we don't play that night. We forfeit our chance to be in the state tournament. Those are all factors. Band competitions. There's people on field trips. All of these things. Where are they going? And it's not snowing in Chattanooga, so all that stuff is there. So we try to talk through all of those, and our whole team will weigh in on what that looks like, and then we'll make the call and try to roll that by 5 o'clock so that we have a recap and go in, and then again our communications team starts sending out messages to you guys at news stations and getting our messages to families and start moving forward with that decision at that point. Another thing that plays a factor too is so sometimes it's not closure or not, but sometimes it is how bad are things. It's dark, right?
Yeah.
And we always want to give daylight to bus drivers who pick up about half of our kids of our 60,000. So sometimes we'll delay 2 hours to get that sun up. So if there is ice on the road and they're not going to take that path.
It's an extra measure of safety.
It is. Just to let them, again, buses are not always easy to operate, and especially when you have inclement weather. So those are kind of the factors that go into how we make that call. A lot happening quick, and again, we rely a lot on watching your all's updates all night so we can kind of be ready at the same time.
See, I'm sleeping. Well, we're second shift. I've already, the hay's in the barn. I'll tell you what, just to give you a glimpse and, pull back the curtain a little bit, if we have snow in the forecast, when I get up the next morning, the first thing I do, pull open the curtain, look outside. If it's not snowing, close the curtain, hop back in bed. Bad dream.
Badgering.
I'll be. It's like giving your word. It's like you tell somebody and it didn't happen. So if I don't know if it helps or not, but we're kicking ourselves.
Yeah,
I think this is
it didn't play out, and it's tricky.
That's a great point, and I think it's something we want to get into on the other side of this break as we finish up. More to come here on the Education Blueprint with Dr. Jon Rysewyk.
I like putting a fork under my pillow, flushing ice cubes down the toilet, and turning my pajamas inside out.
That's what Lucia, a 5th grader at Sequoia Elementary, said when we asked her if she has anything she does to help make it snow. Still to come on the Education Blueprint.
You have a thunderstorm in the winter season. Supposedly say expect snow within 10 days.
Welcome back to the Education Blueprint with Dr. Jon Rysewyk. Today we are joined by WBIR Chief Meteorologist Todd Howell. We are talking weather delays, weather closures, how you forecast the weather. And I guess, Todd, the big question, something that you deal with and everybody in the news business deals with is it better to be first or to be right?
Right. 100%.
Yeah.
Because what good is it if you're first and you're wrong? Mm-hmm. You'd rather be right. Now, I mean, obviously in a perfect world, you want to be as quick as you can and be right. But it's much better. And I think, this isn't just true this is like life. I mean, anything comes down to that, to be honest. Anything you do, not just weather, you want to make sure and get it right. It's important information. And so, so sometimes, I know, and it's competitive. Sometimes we may not always be first. You just hopefully, I don't know if we still have this in our newsroom or not. Of course, see, we're weather people. They put us back in the studio. We're a different breed, so let's put them back there. They don't need to come. I mean, in the newsroom, it says accuracy first. And so I think Prentice, to follow up on that, I think that's the key. And here's the other thing, because we're not always going to get something right. I have to come on. You've heard at news stations, we'll have to, let's make a correction. Well, I think there's integrity in that, because it's just like we're human. We're not always going to get it right.
Yeah.
But strive to get it right, even if you don't at first attempt. That's just a broad statement, I guess.
Sure.
I want to say this, a little therapy for my soul that I didn't expect for today, but it was great to hear you talk about the integrity of the decision and how still after all these years you open your curtain to look and like you kick yourself if you're wrong. And I'm so glad because I do the same thing. Yeah. So to be able to feel like, because you understand the decision, the decision that has to be made, and you want to do what's best for everybody. And when you get it wrong, even though, like I said, there's so many things out of our control, you do still take it personally. So that was good for me for you to share that. So I appreciate that.
I don't know. There's a human, personal element, and that just comes back to you want to do your job as best you can.
Yeah.
Because people are trusting your words. So
yeah.
You feel bad if you let somebody down.
I agree with you 100%. We want to be right, and sometimes that causes people to wonder why we waited so long to make that call. But there is more. There's obviously the academic piece, but we also have things to consider about a lot of our kids get fed. When they come to schools, that's a big issue for us, and you want to make sure that happens. A lot of caring adults and a lot of services and a lot of supports for different students that they get on a day-to-day basis are actually part of what they get at school. Right. So when we think about that too, it's important for our kids to be able to get those things, and we, especially when you have like long stretches that happen. And so, I always think there's a sweet spot in snow. Everybody's good for 2 days, and after 3, they're kind of over it.
Yeah.
But you get into some of that. But it really is for us. It is obviously the academic part and the learning loss. But there are some other factors like that pay in, and so getting right really is important for us too.
Yeah. I totally agree, and I appreciate your honesty and candidness there, John, because everybody's going to wait for Knox County anyway. It doesn't matter how quick. They're going to wait if we bated breath to see. What comes across is there was great caretaking, to be sure, and not just being quick or first, but being accurate. I appreciate that because that's my perception of how I've seen it play out.
That's great. That's good.
I'm sure neither one of you guys who have these big decisions to make aren't above trying to get an advantage in whatever way you can, leaning back on perhaps stuff from the past, things you've been told through the years, some old wives' tales. Do you guys have any of those?
Oh boy!
On how to make sure it snows, make sure it doesn't snow.
You said something about pajamas.
Yeah, I heard it was always the wear your pajamas inside out. Now, when I was a kid and I didn't want to wash my pajamas, I might have done that too. But I think it also works for snow.
I've heard that one. Now I don't think I had any personally. I just wanted to snow. Anyway, I did jot down a few people, and I don't know how you feel about these, John. I'm not sold on the woolly worm. I'm just going to go ahead and get that right. I'm just not sold on the woolly worm, the woolly bear caterpillar. Apparently, if it's the brown represents a mild part of winter. Yep. The black or darker bands represent a more harsh winter, etc. So, and apparently there's 13 bands. I haven't verified this. And apparently for 13 weeks of winter. That's kind of interesting. So apparently the wives' tale is that may tell you, what if somebody said one time I saw one that was all white? Well, I think they were joking. But anyway, so I'm not sold on the woolly worm. The hornet's nest.
Well, I haven't heard the hornet's nest.
Apparently if the hornet's nest are building their nest up really high, it's opposite what you think. If they build it up really high, mild winter. Apparently.
Interesting.
It's opposite of what you think.
Yeah, you think it'd be low.
And again, I'm just relaying some information. If it's low, what you wouldn't think, snowy winter.
Really?
But let's see, what else do I have written down here? A number of acorns. If the mass crop of acorns is plentiful, maybe a cold winter.
Cold winter.
Who's counting those?
Yeah.
I know. Have you heard
this? Maybe the squirrels, Prentice.
Yeah, exactly. Fogs in August, have you heard that? That really applied to the plateau. There was a lady, Helen Lane in Crab Orchard. She counted the number of dense fogs, and that apparently correlated to the number of heavy snows. I think it was just for Crossville or the plateau.
Okay.
But,
interesting.
Perhaps.
So anyway, I don't know. I'm not sold on that. I will say there's one observation, and real quick, just in winter. If you have thunder, if you have a thunderstorm in the winter season, supposedly say expect snow within 10 days. Have y'all heard that? Now that's not really, I guess, a
Yeah.
wives' tale, but it's just kind of a observation. I've seen that one play out more often than not.
So there's probably some science in the atmospheric something going
There's
on.
absolutely science going on. Because if
Interesting.
you're in winter and you get warm and unstable enough to get thunderstorms, it's probably a strong cold front that's moving through.
Okay.
That's exactly right.
All right.
So you're getting your storms, which you're probably going to be followed by cold air and at least some snow. Now, it's not saying a big snow, but just sea snow.
Yeah.
So
Interesting.
that's an interesting one.
Okay,
So,
we'll be on the lookout for thunder.
That's all I got on
Listen
that.
out for thunder.
All right, and so I think it should be important to note that neither of you gentlemen stand by any of those methods that you just put forth there. Just a quick disclaimer: you're welcome to try them, but we're not saying it's going to mean snow for you.
Not in our professional capacity. How about that?
Exactly. and we don't have a weather quarter in our pocket. I'm just going to throw that out. Don't use that. No. Just try to get it right.
Good to know.
Best we can.
Yeah, Todd, I just want to thank you. I just want to thank you for just who you are to our community. I just want to thank you for your leadership. Your integrity comes through. I think everyone just really trusts you. And I know your passion for this community, too. So I just want to thank you for taking time to come in and talk about snow days with us.
Thank you, John. My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
We owe a big thanks to Sequoia Elementary for allowing their students to answer our kid questions, and to our IT and transportation departments, specifically Guy Respis, for helping with episode research. On our next episode,
And what we realized was, talking about the future, that if we don't start addressing some things where the world is going, we're going to be behind.
Knoxville Chamber President and CEO Mike Odom joins us for a wide-ranging discussion on the education economy link and how to prepare kids for the upcoming imagination age. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it and follow or subscribe to the Education Blueprint with Dr. Jon Rysewyk for easy access to all our newest content. And if you can, leave us a review. It really helps others find the show. New episodes drop every other Wednesday. The Education Blueprint with Dr. Jon Rysewyk is a production of Knox County Schools and hosted by Superintendent Dr. Jon Rysewyk with me, Prentice Elliott. Our team also includes Knox County Schools Assistant Superintendent of Strategy Corey Lautner, KCS Creative Services Supervisor Abby Harris, and KCS Executive Director of Public Affairs Carly Harrington. Kaylee Walker coordinates promotion at Knox Schools on Facebook, X, and Instagram. Our cover art was designed by Justin Johnson.